What a year it has been. 2024 has been full of ups and downs and WTFs and come to the universe moments. And we've definitely had our fair share of LOLs over here on the Stella Rae Podcast. So let's just get into it. Welcome back to the Stella Rae Podcast, y'all. If you are new here, welcome. New episodes every Thursday. This is the last episode of 2024, and I just wanted to thank you guys for a great year. If you remember the year prior, if you've been a listener for a hot minute or even just for the past year, I definitely fell off my podcast game. Don't get me wrong, I have been a consistent girly when it comes to the podcast, but with that long-term consistency has definitely brought, ups and downs of times of being more consistent, times of growth, and then times of not uploading for months. So I'm really proud of myself this past year for getting back on the bandwagon and, picking myself up after a really hard year. 2023 was rough in more ways than one, and I feel like everything in my life kind of suffered as a result of that, including my podcast. And so I'm so glad to have kind of found a little bit more, well, definitely a lot more consistency, and I think more so finding my path again and getting back on track. So I really appreciate everyone who has stuck with me through all the different eras, period, but especially over the past year. It really means a lot, and I'm really hoping that 2025 can be bigger and better. I really wanted to go over the top moments of the Stella Rae Podcast from this past year, and we can just share the LOLs. But side note, I just have to say something about this. So if you're watching the video, you see, but I'm wearing this ponytail today from TikTok Shop. Not sponsored in this moment, but I had to make a video for TikTok Shop. I didn't have to, I agreed to, because it was like 30-inch ponytail, and I did not realize... It's really textured, okay? Like, I just thought it was gonna be kind of like wavy, but I feel literally like the Trisha Paytas Latina meme. Like, I literally, that's how I feel right now. I don't think I will probably ever wear this out and about, but I think it's okay for the video if it's kind of just like hidden in the background. I mean, I could take it off, but if anyone was wondering like, why is this okay for me to wear, I mean, technically it's just wavy, but I do feel like the Trisha Paytas meme. Like, I really do. Hopefully it's not that bad. Like, hopefully I'm not editing this and I'm like cringe, but I don't think I'm gonna wear this out in public. So one of my favorite moments from the podcast, and it's one of my favorite moments because I did not realize the impact it would have. I cannot tell you, well, it's only been a handful of people, but that's really cool. Like, the fact that a few of you have used this in your own life. And when I say it, you're gonna laugh. Tantalizing. I don't know if y'all remember, but it was a story time where over the summer, this bro who I met, it was like, when you meet someone out, you exchange Instagrams, it's like, you don't talk. They become like a story replier on occasion. Like, I don't want to say he's like a fan. Like, some bros, they follow you and then they start acting like a fan, period. Thanks, girly. This bro you could just tell he was like a hoe, like sometimes he would hard eye my story, but like not so much. Like, he has some swag, whatever, just to set the vibe. But he asked me to come to the club. Like, this was the thing, like he wasn't interested in me. Like, he was interested in having me around, like probably every other girl. He was not like, oh, I want to take you out. Like, he was like, come to the club, come to my table. And like, I don't think he's a promoter, but it was that type of vibe, And I'm just kind of past that point in my life. Like, I don't really want to go to the club like that, at least, like, I don't know. But I think it was one of the first times he asked me. I was like, we'll see. Like, I didn't flat out decline, but then I just never followed up. And then he was texting me like the next morning at like 5 a.m. or something, like, oh, like, why did you, like, dub me like that? Like, you should come over now, though, da-da-da. I'm like, I have never even been around you other than when we first met. Like, this is not anything. Like, I haven't even run into you since the day that we met, And I'm not saying that, but it's just, like, that's the vibe. So what I said was, sounds tantalizing, or, like, tantalizing offer, but I'm gonna have to pass. And that just seemed to really stick with y'all because a few of you have literally sent me screenshots of you using that, and I just think it's so funny because it's just kind of unexpected. You know, it's like a bro is not going to expect you to say that, and then it's kind of also like, are they going to be dumb and not know what it means? But that's just like a great inside joke. Definitely a top moment for me on the podcast because of just how iconic it became. Which brings me to my next one, which is, can you get the limes? This, I always thought this was a podcast story time, but it actually was a Stella Rae main channel vlog story time. Again, over the past summer, I was at a birthday of a friend. Basically, someone I know was trying to set me up with someone she knows, bro. Like, not, like, their friend. And then, like, his friends were also kind of in on it, or, like, at least one of his friends, whatever. And, like, I don't think I even saw a picture of him before. Like, it wasn't an official setup, but it was kind of, like, low-key. Like, oh, like, my friend, like, da-da-da. Like, they were kind of, like, scheming a little bit. For me, so much is about vibes because I'm literally not even trying to be mean, but it's just, like, if he had just had a completely different attitude and vibe, I would have given him a chance. Like, I mean, girl, like, if, you know, when you just, again, I don't mean to be mean, but you know, when you just think back on some of the guys you entertained and you're like, they were so ugly, what was I thinking? Like, and I only say that because usually, like, someone's only not cute if, like, their vibes aren't cute. Because I think of also some, like, scumbags and just, like, asshole guys that maybe they seemed cute at first and they were, like, stereotypically good looking, but then they're just, like, maybe they're super feminine or they're just a real asshole or, like, a real hoe type guy. So the attraction isn't there. Like, I think, for me at least, let me know if you relate. I feel like a lot of girlies relate. For me, so much of attraction is, like, based in vibes. Even the hoe guy from the Tantalizing story, it's like, I thought he was cute at first, but then I kind of see he's like a hoe. Like, you're doing this to every girl. Like, you're not trying to get to know me. You're, like, in that stage of your life of, like, being a hoe. So I'm not, like, really attracted to you. Like, you know, I don't know. I guess not for every girl it's like that because this is a side note. I don't know if I've ever touched on this. I'm sure I have. But I think it's kind of weird when girls want a tall guy in the sense of, like, if, like, the average height of a woman is, like, 5'2" or something. Like, and so you always see the post, like, is he over 6 foot? Like, everyone wants a man over 6 feet. Why do you care if you're 5'2"? Like, get a man that's 5'8". Because it's just, like, once I started to think about it that way, and I know people have, like, said this before, and, like, it's been a topic of discussion, like, many times, but it's kind of weird because I'm just thinking, like, for myself, a man that's 8 inches taller than me, it just gets to a point where I'm, like, uncomfortable. And, like, height isn't everything. Like, I don't know. I just really don't care. I've talked to guys shorter than me. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it's just, like, when you're a taller girly, you have to just kind of accept it. But it's so weird to me when, as a shorter girly, like, if you're less than 5'7", honestly, and you're, like, insisting on having a man over 6 foot, it's, like, I feel like something's wrong with you where you, like, why do you want to feel so small when you're already small? I need a man to tower over me so much to the point where it's, like, weird. And, like, that's, like, a must-have. It's, like, if it just happened, like, fine, but, like, it's, like, a fetish at that point. Like, it's just weird to me because, like, the tall girlies aren't, like, I mean, maybe some, but you just see it way less where they're like, I need a man that's, like, 7 foot. I need a man that's, like, 6'8". Because it's, like, why would I want someone that tall? Like, if it just happened, sure. But I don't know. It's like, it's just like, that's very low on the list of priorities for me personally because a man is going to be a man. And not to be like a negative Nancy, but I feel like a man that's like 6'4" is like used to girls being all over him because of his height. So it's kind of like a red flag, honestly. But yeah, it's like, I just don't care. Why do you guys care about height and not, like, and then you complain how you get played all the time and then cry. Like, you're just dumb. Like, you're being stupid and you need to get your priorities straight and you have, like, a weird fetish. Like, I don't know. And then, like, then you see the post and the short, like, no offense to the short girly community, but it's just, like, that specific vibe where, like, I don't care. Like, the tall girls will be like, hey, can you, like, save the tall bros for us so it's at least, like, somewhat equal? And the short girls are like, no. And then everyone wants to complain about every man being short these days. And it's like, yeah, because you keep having children with short women. Duh. Like, hello. I don't even consider myself to be tall. Like, I feel like, I know 5'8" is, like, tall for women, but when I think of, like, a tall woman, I think of someone, like, 5'11" and above. But I guess, like, that's not the case. But I don't know. I feel like I'm, like, on the taller side of average. But not like, oh, you're so tall. But I guess I am, because it's like, I just feel like everyone's so short. So anyway, can you get the limes? I could tell that the bro also was like in on the setup, because he came at me just with that, like, you know, when someone's trying to like be super smooth, but you can just like tell they're trying to be super smooth. Again, no offense to this guy, but he was just pulling out all the tips and tricks. And especially at this time, this was like early in the summer. So, you know, it was my first summer living in New York, single. I was just getting back out there, and like, you know, I don't want to say I mean, I probably did have my guard up, but for me more so, I was just being super strict on like sprinkle, peeping red flags, and like just not wanting to entertain anything. So, I mean, I still do that now, but at this time especially, it was like the very first like times of me kind of getting back out there and like doing that. So he was just pulling out every tip and trick of the dust. Like, I don't want to say he's a dusty guy. I think he has like a good job, but just like of a guy, you know, the bro tip and tricks of making a girl feel insecure and stuff. So he'd say stuff like, and I don't, like, it's been some time now, so I don't remember every detail. You can like go to that vlog. I'll try to find it and like if you want the fresh story time. But some things that stand out are like, he was like, well, you know, my ex was a model. I'm just like, babe, like, I looked really good this day too. I remember, like, really good. So I was like, well, babe, like, look at me. And he was like, wow, like, you're right. Just like, I didn't really expect that to like work so well. But then he said, well, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? And I was just pulling direct quotes from Shira 7, like, left and right. And like, this is why I don't, like, she has some good tips and tricks, y'all, like, not just for, like, getting a sugar daddy or whatever, but just, like, at navigating, you know, guys like that are kind of trying to throw you off course and, like, make you feel kind of insecure, or, like, she just, I like a lot of her advice, because it is all about keeping you and your self-esteem intact and not letting someone, especially someone you barely just know, a man you just met, you know, sway you from that. So he's like, so what are you looking for? And I was like, well, I know it when I see it. It's like a direct quote from her. And he was like, wow, like, you just know all the right things to say. Like, I could tell he was kind of like taken aback. I'm like, yeah, your little tips and tricks aren't working. And it's like, who knows if he was consciously doing that, you know, but that was my perception of it. So then his bros come, my friend comes, and we're like, oh, let's take a shot, like, whatever. And so he, like, I feel like there was something else too that he had asked me. But yeah, anyway, he's like getting the little cups for the shots, and he's like, can you get the limes? And the limes were all the way outside. Like, not so far, but like, why are you asking a little girly to do that? Like, it was just like, you know, I think even if it was a friend, like a girl I had just met, or someone I had just met, and they were like saying it to me like that, I would still kind of look at them like funny. Like, if you're my friend, like, bro, I'm not a selfish person. Like, I'm not like, I don't want to do anything ever. But it's just like, I know if I had just met someone, I wouldn't like say it like that. I don't know. It was just very strange to me. And it was like, you all know each other. I'm like kind of the new person here, and you're like saying that. Like, it just felt like a test. Like, it just seemed like a test. Like, it was just weird. So I was like, I don't know. It's like so far. I was like, can you get them? And he was like, ugh. And he was like visibly annoyed. And then after the shot, he ran away and he didn't talk to me. So it was like, thank God. It was giving a test, like, are you the type of woman to serve your man type of test. And again, who knows? Like, who knows? But we kind of know, like, I'm used to especially when you start, you know, leveling up and applying the tips and tricks and filtering through the guys, it's like, if a man wants to pursue you and like likes you and isn't just like, what can I gain from her? He's gonna do everything and anything to impress you. So it was just the fact that like, you just met me. Obviously, like, this is kind of a setup a little bit. And you're like, can you go do this like task? And you think I'm just gonna be okay and like run and do that. Like, it just was very rude and not gentlemanly. That's the thing. It was not gentlemanly. So Can You Get the Limes also became a meme of the year. And then I think y'all remember this from the story time too, but you could tell there was like a leader of the group. And this leader of the group, So after we take the shot, you know, people are just kind of mingling and most people are going outside to the patio area. So I'm like, all my friends are out there. Everyone I know was out there. The friend I came with, like, I was only there with one friend, but like people I had been talking, everyone's outside. So I go outside and I'm just like standing in the doorway, like looking, scanning for my friend. And the leader of the little bro group comes over and he's like, can you give us a moment? Like, I was not even looking at you guys. I was not about to walk over to you guys. And that just really also, like, I was like, that's so rude and ungentlemanly and just not a kind thing to do to anyone, period. Because, like, you're so full of yourself, you'd think I was coming to ask for one of y'all when I'm looking for my friend. Like, it was just very off-putting. But at the same time, I was very glad from this experience that I was, like, peeping all these things, because probably younger me, less experienced, less game me would have, like, not realized and, like, just be like, oh, like, why? Like, I don't know. You know, it's just, like, if you don't know, you don't know. Maybe his comments would have made me insecure. Maybe, like, I would have entertained it more, you know, because I just wouldn't be peeping up on these little red flags. And that's why it's really important to be strict, because just especially, and I know I say this almost like every podcast, but especially with guys that are a little, you know, or a lot narcissistic or sociopathic or just manipulative, the way that they test to see if someone's going to be a good victim is if you fall into their little traps and their little games of like doing things for them, saying yes to them. They're basically trying to train you to like be insecure and say yes to them. So I could tell, again, like, I don't know the guy. It was very limited interactions with everyone, but that was enough for me to not be interested. And that's why it's kind of important to like not be full of yourself in like a rude way as a woman, but like just always put yourself as the priority and just have a very strong, just be strong and solid within yourself, so that especially someone you just met cannot bring you down or like sway you from how you feel about yourself and like your own confidence. So that's why Can You Get the Limes became an LOL story time instead of like my horrible ex story time, you know, because like that's how those things start. And I feel like a lot of people just miss those first red flags, and that's how you can like accidentally get into like a horrible relationship, is and you're like, well, everything was fine in the beginning, but maybe it wasn't, because there was like little really subtle things. So be strict. This is the last one, I promise. This is the last bro LOL story time. But my one date with the guy who was also this type of guy, oh my god, and he's like, he was just trying to put me down for like everything and anything, to the point where it didn't make sense. Like, he was asking me about school. I was like, oh no, like I just was like working right after high school, so I didn't go to college. And he was like putting me down for that. And then when he was asking me about my 5-year plan, I was like, oh, like I would love to write like a book, and he's like, well, why? Like, you should rethink that plan. And I was like, why? And he's like, because nobody reads. I was like, oh, like you don't read? Because like I said when I originally told this story, like I read. I know a lot of the girlies out there listening read. Pretty much everyone in my life reads. We follow each other on Goodreads, you know? So I was just genuinely confused. I'm like, oh, you don't read? And he's like, well, nobody reads. I'm like, nobody has time to read. And I was like, okay, but you're trying to tell me that I'm dumb? That was horrible, bro. That was like, ugh. That was like the worst time. Like, oh my god. So who reads? Also, he did not get a second date, bro. I did not talk to him after that. He was replying to my story for a little bit, but then I never opened it. Like, I wouldn't open them, so he stopped. Thank God. Dude, also, good tip and trick is if someone, you can just tell, like, someone is not a good guy or, like, ew. Like, it's not like you went on a date and you're like, oh, we're not a good romantical fit. But it's like you can tell they're, like, kind of evil. You can ghost because that's literally protecting yourself. And especially a very manipulative kind of person, kind of guy, is not going to listen to reason. So I remember with that one specifically, I kind of went back and forth in my mind, like, should I say something? Like, should I not? But I was like, ultimately, no. He was so disrespectful and, like, gross. Like, anything I say, he's not going to take well based on everything, like, all his reactions to anything I said on the date. But yeah, I actually had a dream last night that, like, somebody, like a TBT, texted me all these paragraphs, like, trying to manipulate me into getting, like, we weren't even in a relationship, but it was, like, so dumb. Like, it was, like, way back in the day. And in the dream, I was like, ew. And I was, like, showing my friend in my dream, and she was like, oh, yeah, like, I forgot to tell you, like, when you guys were talking, like, we hooked up. And I was like, oh, my God. But it just, like, anyway, in the dream, I was, like, coming to the conclusion that I wasn't going to reply to him because I'm, like, he's, like, trying to manipulate me back into, like, talking to him. And, like, I don't want to talk to him. So I'm not even going to reply and be like, no. Like, I'm just not going to engage. So it's very important to be no contact with, is, like, my point with those types of guys, because that's the only way they really, like, will leave you alone, because they get bored. You know, and it says that in a lot of, like, narcissist, how to deal with a narcissist, how to recover from a narcissistic relationship books, is unless you, like, have to talk to somebody, like, because you have kids together, or, like, for some reason you need contact with them, like, you have to go pick up some stuff, or, like, again, like, kids is usually the main thing. You're supposed to just gray rock, which means any conversation, any interaction you do have to have with them, you keep it very, like, limited, no emotion, and just facts. Like, you do not engage with any sort of, like, emotional tips and tricks they try to play on you. And that's why it's also very important to learn how to control your emotions, because if someone texts you something triggering, trying to like mess with you, trying to engage with you, trying to get you to get a reaction, and you don't know how to control your emotions, your impulse is going to be to reply and go off on them. And because you can't control it, that's what you're going to do. And you just fed right into what they wanted you to do. Like, you fell right into their trap. So I would love to hear what your favorite Stella Rae podcast moment was from the past year, if you have one. And we can only hope that 2025 will bring us more. I'm just kidding. Those are pretty, like, those weren't that good. But. So I have one last thought that I'm really going to bring fully into 2025 and continually remind myself of throughout this upcoming year. And I feel like hopefully this can help the anxiety girlies out there, or, you know, just anyone who has struggled with self-doubt and almost like that stuck feeling, whether that's creatively or just like in life, in any aspect of your life. So I had a realization over this past full moon. Last full moon of the year, babes, she came in strong. That so much of my personal anxiety and just, you know, when you think of patterns in your life and like cycles and like repeating cycles and things of the sort, so much for me can be traced down to almost anticipation anxiety, or like fear of the what if, instead of actual like concrete facts or evidence. And I know that's like such a huge thing of what anxiety is, just period, like worrying about the future and like stressing over things that haven't really happened yet. But just kind of realizing this fully and being able to specify, like, you know, examples, think of actual examples that where this has happened and like how this actually looks and feels for me. It was kind of freeing, honestly, because it's like, okay, now I can kind of deal with it because I know what it is, or like what it looks like, what it feels like. So what I realized as a result of this is that a lot of it comes down to self-trust and like trusting yourself and your ability to handle different situations. What you have to do in situations like that, if you're feeling that and thinking that and giving yourself anxiety at just the thought of something potentially happening, is kind of like walking yourself through what you would do if that would happen. And sometimes it's like you do that and you still feel anxious. But I think it just comes down to trusting yourself that you can handle certain situations. And I don't want to say be delusional, but like if you are overly anxious and you have that like worrying sense of your, or part of your brain, you almost have to be like, well, that's a problem for later. You know, like I'll deal with that later. I don't have to deal with that right now. I'm going to focus on being present and feeling good in the moment. And I know I've said this countless times throughout the years, but I feel like it's so important because I always also need the reminder. But when you do things like practice meditation, basically just when you have a mindfulness practice, so like for me, doing yoga helps so much. I sleep so much better if I do like some quick stretches or restorative poses before bed. Meditation, limiting caffeine, drinking more like herbal teas, watching my diet, scrolling less, doing things that are going to, you know, daily help my nervous system, because so much of what we do in our culture, it's like normalized for us to be destroying our nervous systems, like constantly scrolling, constantly drinking caffeine. I know some of y'all are addicted to your energy drinks and your vapes. Please stop. You know, screen time is up. We're not usually like present in the moment in our bodies, you know, and not even just due to that stuff, but like, of course, you know, just also due to like trauma or like your DNA or whatever. These everyday actions are definitely not helping the root of the problem if there is one. So I just really try to focus on things that will calm my nervous system and bring me back to the present moment. Even things like just reminding myself to breathe and doing like normal breathing. You know, I did an episode about EFT tapping, like it's almost been 2 years at this point, but I still go back to that all the time. And sometimes like if I get anxiety in public or like on the train and I don't want to like fully start tapping myself, like tapping my face, if I just like tap my fingers and like imagine each of the points, like the sequence, and I just do that a couple times, I don't know if it's just because my brain is then focused on something else, but like I will start to calm down as well. Building trust with yourself that you are able to do and get through uncomfortable situations. Because I feel like a lot of the things, at least for me, like a lot of the things we have anxiety about, they're usually just like uncomfortable. It's not usually like life or death situations, you know? It's like, I don't know, like a lot of people have a fear of like public speaking, or like if you're nervous before an interview, if you're nervous, you know, to take a trip, if you're nervous to break up with someone. It's like, those are all perfectly reasonable things to be nervous about. But when it starts to get to like unreasonable amounts of anxiety where it's like literally just feels like it's overtaking your life, it is really important to like remind yourself. And then also, you know, building self-trust. What that looks like each day is like forcing yourself to be uncomfortable on purpose, you know, putting your phone down, being in touch with your emotions. If you have the option to do something scary, like doing it, like for like obviously in a safe way, but like sometimes, I gave this example recently on my IG story, but sometimes squatting at the gym is so scary and I just like don't want to do it. Like even if it's not that heavy, like I know I can do the weight, it's just like, oh my God, like what if something bad happens? Like, oh my God. And I get to like, my body starts to get nervous. So just pushing myself to like try anyway. And of course, like this is not advice. Like I'm not telling you to do that. Like be safe, obviously get a spotter. But for me in this instance, it's like, I know I can do it. It's just like, I'm psyching myself out. So like doing it anyway, or like, you know, like as a kid, it's like sometimes a slide would be so scary and you have that rush feeling. Some people really like that rush feeling, but I never have. Like I don't like to feel nervous and it's uncomfortable. Overcoming things, the only way out is through. Make future decisions, you know, going into 2025 and whatnot, through the lens of like self-trust and alignment rather than fear or what if thinking, you know, and you can apply that however you see fit. But let me know if you relate to that at all. I think I'm going to wrap this episode up. Last episode of 2024, y'all. Thank you again so much for rocking with me this past year, for listening. Let me know what you want to see or hear more of in this upcoming year. I hope you are all having a great holiday season. Happy New Year. Be safe. Don't drink and drive. And love you guys. I will talk to you soon.